Welcome to Single Parent Success Stories, a podcast designed to inspire single parents. Here you'll find resources from self-care to finances to parenting and everything in between. Discover what it takes to thrive. Let the stories inspire you to what is possible. Welcome to Single Parent Success Stories. Today's guest is Hillary Rubin. She is a master coach, shifting the divorce narrative, putting peace and kids first as you reclaim your life. Hillary offers common sense, soulful guidance for soon-to-be or newly divorced co-parents seeking to ditch uncertainty and plan their lives. She is a single mom of one, and she's joining us from Los Angeles, California. Welcome, Hillary. It is a pleasure to have you.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. Thank you. So please share with us your story. How did you become a single parent? Was this a conscious decision or an accident or a purposeful choice?
What an interesting question, right? How did it happen? It was a couple years ago when we were all freaking out about toilet paper and cleaning our groceries. I'll leave it at that. And already the relationship was, we've done a lot in our relationship to make it work and to figure it out, and a lot of therapy, just everything from therapy to Tony Robbins over the years. And I think my biggest thing was my son, and failure, and I couldn't make a marriage work, and it was a lot. We were both doing our lives in the way that we were, and I don't see that we were really a team. There was more competition in the dynamic of the relationship, and I would push a lot of personal development and different things like that, and it was really coming from one side. And I think that happens often because women, we get stuck on perfection, and we're the baby makers, and we tend to want to change things in our relationship and our partners, and usually it's valid, it's just like better communication and all that. And personal growth is huge for me, and maybe at some points, maybe it's too much, it's like I can't ever stay in one place. And so we did the work, right, to kind of see how we can keep this going, because I don't think anybody really enjoys having to have a failed marriage or get divorced. So we did a lot of therapy and worked through it all and talked about the different things that we can do. And we lived under the same roof for a couple of years. And we were good, like in that therapy thing and unfolding, but then just so much would come up and unravel, and it was really clear that we were done. Like we knew that, like, you know what, we're done. And we both watched that movie, I think it was called Marriage or something, with Adam Driver and what's her name? It's blanking me right now. Scarlett Johansson. And we both watched that movie. I don't remember the exact title of it. And like at the end of it, we looked at each other and we're like, yeah, like it's us. And we both knew. And it's sad, definitely. And then things just got kind of ugly, and living under the same roof and figuring that out was a little choppy. And now I have a perspective, and so it was a thing that we had to do, and it was, and we're still in it. You know what I mean? It's like we're co-parenting and figuring out a lot of different things and the roles. And so it's, so here I am now as a single parent, it's a single parent and co-parenting. I always kind of look at this whole thing of, if we keep saying like I'm single, right, but then you're part of a co-parenting thing, I believe like changing the narrative is, how do we do family different? And that was my intention from the beginning when we told our son, and I was like, hey, let's do this. And there's this great book, Tell Me What to Say, a children's book, like a parenting book. And it basically talked about how to, tell your kids. And I still kind of am walking around with this idea of how we're doing family differently and having peace. However, if one side, like a marriage, if one side's like, hey, let's move in this direction, and the other one's like, not interested, it's a little hard to do that. So for me, it's why I will say co-parent, changing the narrative of calling him my co-parent or former husband. I think instead of like ex and all that, those just don't work for me. So here I am, living on my own and figuring it out. And yeah, there are moments it's really great, and there's moments that it's really tricky. And that's the truth. I think for everyone, even if they've done it, even 10 years later, you know what I mean? It's something that I don't see. I mean, like, unless you've gone through it or going through it, you understand, I guess.
You're totally right. Yeah. What were some of the challenges you faced when you became a single parent?
I mean, the things that I deal with on a day-to-day is my child's mental health, my own mental health. And it's also now everything is, you got to take care of, right? The car breaks down, got to take care of the car. The trash needs to be taken out. The dishes need to be loaded and unloaded. Cooking meals. I cook a lot, right? The budgeting, it's everything. Now there is no divide of what needs to get done, of the responsibilities, for the most part, right? Like, yes, maybe there's a little bit, but it definitely, the challenges are being able to, like, I'm full on, right? It isn't like, oh, I can go lay down now. My kid, I don't put in front of the television. So we don't do television, and we're more in Waldorf, the education. And so it's, the challenge is like, hey, you're gonna, he's under 10, and it's like, hey, I need you to make your bed. I need you to help with the dishes. I need you to do some things. And he doesn't want to do that. And I don't know if that's happening at the co-parent's house. So the challenge is that there's different things happening in both houses, and there isn't this united front, which I do think is important. If, I do believe moving in that direction and keeping that, even if the parents, like, if you disagree, it's like, can we be on the same page with these things, that, like, the parenting part, and we can do it together. So it's really it's the day to day, and it's living in a new space. And those are some of the challenges. And then I think there's a big challenge of, you may be dealing, for me, and just in general, dealing with the co-parent, because all of a sudden they're acting and saying and texting, and however, they're going through what they're going through, and they're going through a process as well, right? It's like, two people were together, two people came apart. It's not on one person, it's on two. And I do believe in co-parenting therapy, and I suggested it. And it's like, no, right? If you pay for it, and everything, the challenges come down to the finances and everything being a fight. And that's just really a drag. It's just really a drag and a waste of time and energy. Life is short. And I just see that to be able to overcome the ego, right, is a very big thing for both sides. So that's some of the work that I do and, help people with is, there's moments, and so much of it had to learn, that I just don't respond to a text. I've got to not say what I want to say. I've got to write the text and not send it. I've got to make an audio recording with what I want to say and not send it, and it's true, but these are all exercises, because it's tricky, to be now like, oh, now it's me. And there's moments that we all can relate to, that all I know that I seek is just having somebody's arms around me. I'm not dating anyone, I'm not with anyone, that can just be like, it's going to be okay, and that's what hopefully, like, the marriages and those unions really bring, is that comfort and that reminder, as a female, because I'm not interested in moving through the world as a man and being in my masculine, which in my marriage, there wasn't a lot of polarity, right? So if I wanted to be in my feminine, it was tricky and criticized and not supported. And it's very clear to me that how, that's a little bit of a navigating of how do I stay in my feminine while I'm doing this thing in the world, because the world really pushes women to be more masculine, in a lot of ways. And yeah, so
You're right. You're right. You're right. And like how in the beginning you mentioned, dealing with overwhelm. Before there were two people. Now you got to do the laundry and pick up the kids and cook the dinner and bring the dinner and doing all that. And I think it's a lot, to handle. And in the beginning, we think we got to, hold the fort. We got to be on 24/7 and be there no matter what. Nothing can fall apart, nothing can break down. You got to be there 110%, and sometimes it's difficult. And another point you mentioned, of course, in the co-parenting situation, you gotta compromise, and sometimes you would face those challenges and oppositions, and you do still get triggered, because we all come into any partnership, any relationship with our own set of values and beliefs, and then we start butting heads. And it's not to anybody's benefit. We just get ourselves aggravated. The other person is aggravated. Nothing gets solved. So totally get, the challenges that you're coming from. As a result of your becoming a single parent, how did it influence your life? And like before, you mentioned you were stay-at-home mom. How did your career change? And now the fact that you're helping women kind of overcome that. And
yeah. I was a stay-at-home mom, and before that, I was a coach, a life coach and a business coach, and I had a coach training program, The Art of Becoming a Coach. And I took off time, and then I just didn't get back into it. And for various reasons. And then there was a lot of pressure, for me to get work and get a job. And it was like, I haven't really held a full-on job since the 90s, you know what I mean? Like prior as a yoga teacher, and I did a lot of stuff. And I started a bakery while we were living under the same roof, which now it had a year life. And which was fun and cool, and really something to build my self-esteem and like my confidence level. And now the difference is I've done different gigs, I've done different work from my experience in my life, like event stuff. And I was doing some things that came, and it's really important when we are going through this, chosen, not chosen, others, I think we all choose it in like consciously and subconsciously, right? And then there are people who stay. There are moments where I'm like, maybe I should have stayed. Maybe it being toxic might have been better in a way. It's just like the mind is like such a challenge. And so for work, yeah, I was able to move out, create a second home, as you can see behind me, and create consistency. And what really kicked in was my natural abilities of creating a life and creating a space and creating consistency for my son. Because me moving out, it's very different when the woman stays at home at the house and when the woman moves out and the parent that moves out, and like how that plays. I realized that the psychology for everyone involved. So yeah, like work in the world is different, and having to step up and produce and, and it step into a masculine, or how do I do my work in the feminine? That's an adjustment, it's a total adjustment in a world where they celebrate hustle culture and, and all of that. So yeah, to be able to help women or even men who are like, well, how do I tell my kids? How do I move out? What do I do to make it healthy for them? I have some things that I saw that really worked, and like packing up your home and being able to pack if you have a young kid without your kid, and that your child isn't and not like, I didn't take everything from the home. I didn't want to change his base, his home base, good for good or for not, and then creating the consistency for him. And it was, you know, really important for me to see that my son would be able to adjust. And I do think in some ways he is, and in some other ways it's hard. It's going to be new forever in a way, you know, especially when they're a little bit older. Like when you're doing it when they're like 5 and under, I think it is just like, oh, this is just the way it is. Right. So there is an aspect of the age of your child, you know?
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah. If you could go back in time, would you do anything differently?
In what respect? That's a big question.
What advice would you give your younger self in how your life turned out and where you are today?
I always find that a really interesting question, because I always want to go back, instead of giving my younger self advice, I want to celebrate what my younger self did successfully to get me here. I find that that's a much more tangible thing to do. So when you know what I mean? I mean, for me, it's like, oh, okay, not like, but you've always been able to survive, and you've always been able to figure stuff out, and you've always been able to make decisions, you know, and land on your feet, like, you know, and that's something that I would want to celebrate and acknowledge about myself. I do believe it's important to acknowledge before whatever we would tell our younger selves. Because a lot of people are like, what would you tell your younger self? And it's like, that's great. However, let me tell my younger self, you did a great job. You know what? You did really good. What I would have done differently in my life, regardless of marriage, divorce, is probably stick to a career a little longer. And when I walked away from coaching to my coaching in 2016, not walking away for so long and actually taking the time to really get clear on what I wanted to do career-wise, in a way, you know, what my contribution was going to be outside of my son, because he became everything for me. And yeah, so that's a big thing. And I would have done differently is had more kids and not been, so I would have had kids earlier. I had my son at 41 is when, pregnant at 40. I would have had children sooner. But again, once you've lived and experienced the life, it's so much easier to go back and to go, oh, you know what? Wow, the programming was thick. And I thought a career was so rewarding and important, when being a mother was way more rewarding, is more rewarding, and having more children and actually really embracing the mother archetype would have been really incredible, you know, to have 3, 4, you know, children and really give myself into my fullest expression of being a mother and having a family. That's what I would have totally done different. So anyone watching this, you know, I mean, obviously we're talking divorce and single mother, but if you're younger, you know, or you know anyone that's younger, women don't realize, at least for me, I didn't know that I had an option to have kids and be a mom. That was never an option on the table. It was, you're going to have a career, you're going to work. Maybe you're going to have kids. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think is the most important trait to instill in a child?
That's a great question. That they're loved for who they are, not what they do.
I think it's very powerful, and sometimes we are so ingrained into doing that we forget about being. And just being is enough. So I love that. Thank you. Mm-hmm. What kind of advice would you give to present single parents who are just stepping onto the journey of single parenting?
not doing it alone, right? Because divorce is a business deal and it's a spiritual practice. It's an initiation. And that means a part of you is gonna die. And which is, intense and painful, and that we're not meant to do this alone. And whether you get a coach, you're working with a therapist, you have a circle of people supporting you. It's really, really important. Number one. Number two, really understand that you have to put your ego aside and you have to look at what's best for you, but also for the children. And the bickering and the arguing and the little blah, blah, like that whole, like do the work, like know your triggers, do the work, both sides, and stop pointing a finger and stop bringing what is the separation alive, like stop keeping it alive, the fight, like drop the rope, and just don't take I'm like, drop the rope, don't take the bait. I'm like sounding like a bunch of like t-shirts, but really it's so easy to get pulled into the argument because you want to be right or you want to be seen and heard. And like, here's the thing, I may never get appreciated for the things that I did, and it could make me cry. It hurts, right? I've done and I do and I give, but I also understand that if you're the giver and you're the person who's taking the thing over to your kid because the kid forgot it or whatever, and you're the one that's constantly helping the other, you gotta really check that. Because one of the things you have to do a lot of the times, you gotta have boundaries. Like, for instance, it was supposed to be raining tomorrow. I bought the rain jacket, right? Because the clothing situation gets to be, well, he has more clothes there. And it's like, his stuff is his stuff. Whether it's in my house or your house, it's his stuff. And if I'm saying, hey, you know what? I don't have enough pairs of pants. How many pairs? Like, we've got to just make sure he has enough in both places. Like, hey, can you get a pair of sneakers? And like the pettiness, like drop it and stop it. And I just do my best to like stay out of it. And just, yeah, like you can be the bigger parent. You can be the one that goes the extra mile. And remember, it's in the name of your kid. Remember, it's not necessarily you're going to get a thank you or it's going to give you points. However, you've got to be really clear that you're not, because they'll just keep letting you do it. Like, for instance, it was like I said, it was supposed to rain and I have the rain jacket that I got for him. And instead of me driving, because he's around the corner, and dropping it off, I left it in a bag and I said, hey, I have his rain jacket. You can swing by and get it if you'd like. Right? Like, that was it. Like, I'm not going and, well, because I normally would go and drop it off. Or the first day of school, I offered to go over so we could all be together and like take a picture, because I wanted him to see his dad on his first day. And I wanted to make sure that, this is the idea, is the steps that I keep taking is for us to do family differently. However, it takes time to heal. And if I'm the person who initiated it, so I'm the bad one, so it's, it's a daily steps to do the best that you can. That's pretty much it. And there's no perfection. I constantly am sharing and talking on Instagram, and I give different things because we're all in it, everybody's in it, and it's yeah. It's real. Yeah.
Yeah, but you're right about, the things you mentioned about setting boundaries and not doing it alone. As they say, it takes a village to raise a child. Oftentimes we think that we are the bigger man if we're doing everything by ourselves, letting ourselves fall apart. We don't really need to do that. We can ask for help much sooner. And putting the ego aside, I think, is very important as well, because we get triggered so easily. And, you being the bigger parent, stepping it up a bit for the sake of your child, I think, is important as well. Is there anything I haven't asked that you would like to share?
Well, there's very, clear mindset shifts. It's all about mindset, and there's a lot of things. I guess it's like, for anyone that's watching this and you're feeling lonely or you're feeling sad and you're feeling like you failed, you don't have to let those feelings take over. And it's really important to know when a feeling comes up, to know it's coming up, to come out, to be released, and not to define and get lost in it. Because it's really easy to do that, and then go down that road, and it can be really dark and painful. I get it, and I understand. And it's really important to look at the things that you're doing well and right, and take care of yourself. And it is, everyone talks about this, like, after divorce, it's all going to be fantastic and amazing. And, once again, you might see that in an Instagram post, or, social media can be helpful, but it can also be detrimental to how you're feeling. And when you see stuff and there's like, oh, it's excellent after because people get remarried and all that, I'm not rushing to get remarried, and I'm not running into all that, and just know that you're doing the work. You're going to do it. It's going to be hard. And maybe you can have a little fun and laugh at it and find the amusement in it. And that's like a mindset shift. And it's important to have, the support around you, whether it's coach and therapist and friends. And know if you're burning out your friends, like, you gotta, like, let them know, like, when you're reaching out to them, because it can be really heavy, for a lot of people. And I also noticed the one last thing is, friends that are married, like, I'm thrilled that their marriages are successful. And I always am looking at what makes it successful so that I can see, oh, wow, that's something I want to work on for me, or just be a student of, so that I know now for my next relationships, what is it that I can adjust, right? That's important. And knowing thyself is really important, and knowing where your faults are, or, or your flaws, which are, just opportunities to grow and to work those muscles, and just being, my last thing is just give yourself grace, give yourself grace.
Yeah, you're so right.
And laugh.
I have
laugh as much as you can.
Yeah, I think when you can laugh at yourself, life becomes easier, because we take everything so seriously. On the grand scheme of things, life is so short and such a tiny speck in the universe. And we make such a big drama about our day-to-day living that you start to wonder, like, why? Why waste time on negative stuff? Why waste time on this ego pulling each other? Like, what are we winning in the end?
Yeah, I hear you, for sure.
What I call it, how do you create certainty in uncertain times when you go through divorce?
Yeah, it's a great question. Depending on where you're at, right? Like, if you're still living under the same roof, you're creating certainty is going to be writing a plan, right? Who's moving out, making some decisions, right? And you can have decision fatigue. So the certainty is, okay, I'm really clear. We did everything we could. We're done. And then knowing what's the next best step, right? That next step is, are you doing some therapy? Are you working with the person that you're with, right? And then you got to tell your kids. But in order to tell your kids, you have to have a plan, right? Every therapist and everywhere I read and everything is, before you tell your children, you have a plan, because the children need to know there's a plan, that you've got it taken care of, right? You got to be an adult. And then it's chipping away, and really certainty is having a plan. If you're moving out, well, you got to write your wish list. You got to write the things you need to do. You got to do those brain dumps and go, okay, I got to get boxes. You know what I mean? There are certain steps of things that you got to do. And then you got to find a place, right? And then if you're like, well, I've been a stay-at-home mom, how am I going to do that? Well, it's getting creative, right? There's different ways of doing it. So to me, creating certainty is being in action and taking action and moving. And it can be as simple as making your bed in the morning, you know, or even the big move might be, I got to move out of the room that we're living in, right? Like that was a big step. That was a really scary move for me from a psychological standpoint, for myself and for my kid. I'm the one leaving the bedroom, right? It was really something that I made bigger for myself. So yeah, so to create certainty, it's understanding where you are, knowing where you want to be, and then it's filling in what are the steps, the small, where you are, where you want to be, small little increments so that it's not completely overwhelming, because it can be extremely overwhelming, all the things if you're moving out. If you're staying in the house, it's different, right? Some of the certainty might be, okay, walking through the house and just going, these are the things that are mine before the marriage, you know, these are, because you're going to have to separate your stuff. You're going to have to go through the books. You're going to have to go through the whatever, right? And it's easy to run away and it can be extremely overwhelming for people. That's an area that I do really well. I mean, honestly, I could just step into someone's home and totally help them do that. Like I know how to do that. Like that's the area that I really did well, painfully, not easily. I think the hardest part was that. So it's understanding that and creating certainty is, you know, once I knew I was moving out and once I knew all those things and I landed a place, I had to start getting stuff. I had to start figuring it out, you know, and certainty was, this is the week that, you know, this is when we're going to tell him, this is what it's going to be. We figured that out. And then it's like, this is when I'm moving. And I had a week to pack and a week to unpack. And that was, and week to unpack and move. And then my kid was home. So it's really making a plan and setting it up. I mean, technically, if you have younger kids, but in general, if you can pack and get people to help you pack and get that together and move out and not fight over the freaking lamps and the dishes and all that, like it's just using and knowing resources to create certainty, you know, like, okay, this is, I'm staying, I'm not. And I just, everything that I did every step of the way, if I was taking something or I was like, this is going to be for me, I would then go, okay, we need this, we need that. I need to help. And I did, you know, was it acknowledged? No, but I got to let that go. So creating certainty is taking action or asking for help. So you're not keeping your head in the sand, which sometimes that feels really good. Trust me, I get it. But then pacing yourself.
Right, but it's good. You have a plan. That's good. When my marriage was dissolving, I didn't know what I wanted, and I had, you know, the mediator. Okay, what do you want? What do you want? And the ex-spouse. What do you want? What do you want? And I was in this fog of uncertainty. I didn't know what next step to take. Is this a good decision or is it a bad decision? Because oftentimes we so like ingrained with what we don't want that it's sometimes difficult to find what we actually do want.
I agree. And after the fact, you might go, oh, right? Because I'm in that and I'm going, oh, actually, this doesn't sit with me now. You know, having the space, because when you're all up in each other's places and you've got mediators and you've got lawyers and, you know, you don't know your rights. I mean, again, if you are not even separated, like you got to look at the stage that you're at. And then you got to talk to a mediator, and then you got to look at what the laws are in your state. And you got to look at what resources are available to you. Like there's so many different stages of creating certainty. That's why having somebody help you, right? Like having a coach and someone who's like, okay, let's look, because each individual situation is unique, like we all are. And so there isn't we're all going to do this the same way, right? There just isn't. There isn't. And and a lot of women, you know, like, I don't want to be, you know, I'm just going to let it flow and I'm just going to be passive. And trust me, I know the fighting is draining. And when a man is angry and he doesn't have tools, the narcissistic stuff comes out. I'm not calling not every man is a narcissist. I really don't like that. Like, because not everybody's a therapist to diagnose somebody as that, but there's narcissistic behavior that comes in because there's a fight and a man is showing up to fight. And so this is what you're seeing is a man who's fighting and lost whatever he's losing. I mean, unless like whatever, I'm just giving my example. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it is tricky sometimes to know what it is you desire, what you'd like to have. I just want to say like what you want is focusing on want is lack, what you don't have. So shifting, flipping the script of what is it that I'd like to create and have, and whatever you decide right now can change. And that's the thing you need to understand is in the negotiation process, you may change your mind and the other party doesn't like that. And they will threaten and do whatever they want, but you can change your mind. And yeah, you can. And say, hey, at the time I agreed to this. Now I don't agree anymore. It's not in my best interest.
Mm-hmm.
And right. That's scary to do. It's scary to step up and be that way. I mean, even my acupuncturist, when I went and had a session with her and she went through divorce and I said, oh, I just want to be feminine and I just want to be like loving. And she's like, yeah, you do. And it's good to be that way, but not now. It's like, okay. Because it's draining and it's like taxing. And a lot of women will just be like, I don't want to deal with it. But you know what? You have to. And there are hard decisions to make. And that's why having somebody there to help you decipher it, because the energy, you're not clear, you have brain fog, whatever's going on. It's like you don't want to make a decision when you're all in those emotions necessarily. And you want to use those emotions to help you decide in certain ways. I mean, it's like I said, there's a lot of nuances to it.
You're right. You're right. I feel like we can talk for hours with you.
I don't know if that's good or not.
If people would like to find out more about you, where would they go?
Where would you go? Well, you will go to HillaryRubin.com, and there's 2 L's in Hillary. So you go to HillaryRubin.com, and I have a free training there. And I should just give you the link to that. But there's a free training on the 5 mindset shifts to help you save your sanity. And a little bit of I touched on today. And there's a meditation, and there's a guide and a meditation. And then I have like a little class on unpacking each of those mindset shifts. And so there's 2 L's in Hillary. And I guess the link will be in the show notes. Yes. And then we'll have a link in the show notes for directly to the training, and also on Instagram, Hillary Rubin.
Awesome.
And I do daily videos and different things there. And there's, more to come and more things that are going. And I offer free clarity sessions. So you can we can chat and kind of see where you are and what to help you find clarity of what your next step and what your plan would look like.
Yeah.
And those are free. Yeah.
What is the next thing you want to create? Any fun projects you're working on that you like to share?
That's about it.
All right.
That's where I'm at right now. I mean, as far as what's next, I mean, I have an ebook that I'm working on and getting that together and getting a book together, ebook book. So I'm working on that, and I just don't have like it's going to be done by date. So
that's fine.
That's where I'm at for now. And there's other little things in the works, but for right now, yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming. And I think you offer a wealth of knowledge coming through your own experience and also helping others not feel alone and have that advocate, have that support. I think that's very important. When I was going through my divorce, it was me, myself, and I on emotional scale. So I love the work that you are doing. Thank you so much. And it was a pleasure of having you.
Yeah, thank you so much. You asked great questions. I really enjoyed being able to share. And everyone that's watching, thank you so much. You're not alone. We're here.
Thank you.